at that ultimate level, what we do understand, that it is truly there are no others. And when there are no others, nothing is sacred and nothing is profane. And this is also a great source of liberation. It's the end of sorrow. Preferences play themselves out. We still go with the way how we prefer it. But we know that nothing is sacred because nothing is profane.
I also have a question about Spanda. Because if everything comes from Spanda, it means everything is sacred. So then I don't understand how some things feel sacred, like a swan or a peacock or a rose. Is this just the conditioning of the human mind, or is there such a thing in those templates of creation that some things hold a resonance of sacredness?
Well, okay, it's quite... So, since you brought the species from the animal kingdom, particularly in this case birds, right? Feathered, right? The class of feathered, right? If we look into these more ancient, right, pagan forms of spirituality before the, let's say, rise of great religions. In the West, that would be before the Abrahamic traditions, right? Because it's with the Abrahamic traditions, this shift from paganism took place, which has been also, for quite some time, attempts were made, continually being made, to reevaluate, because at first it was like, even the word pagan, the word pagan, what it means, Do you know what the word pagan? Nobody knows what the word pagan means?
About the cycles of nature, so.
No, but what it means, where the word pagan, paganism, pagan. Yes, that's obviously not Christian. Yeah, what is pagan? Why it became a dirty word? Let's face it. The paganism was systematically eradicated. Look what was done to the Druids, to the Scythes, to the so many very ancient forms of worship had to go underground. Do we know that? And I trust we do. It wasn't just, burning the awakened women because they were more common demographically always. Whenever a woman displayed any sign of explicit energy, let alone that accompanied by power and beauty, it's, the paganism was waged a war well before the Crusades going to claim the Jerusalem, Holy Jerusalem. The word pagan means the worst form of inferiority. It's something which is basically terrible. You see, pagan worships they are inferior. They are like primitive and not at all part of the civilized world. So, why are we speaking about this? Is because what you're asking here, right? And I can actually forgot everything. Yeah, because I'm in Spanda.
Of swans and peacocks and roses. Yeah. And if I may just add, I was also wondering, like, speaking of the sacredness of the forms, but also of the sounds. Like, for example, the Abhija mantras, we say they're sacred, but like the evening news, we don't say it's sacred. So I don't really understand if everything is sacred coming from Spanda.
So now I'm lost. Which one is it? We're talking about the feathered one still? Or, yeah? No, because in the pagan world, prior to, let's say, religious kind of institutionalized, widespread, organized way of how to worship, which, you have to worship in a certain way. You can't just worship a tree anymore. It's considered to be a form of pagan. You can't worship a stream, a mountain. It's like you misdirecting your attention, kind of, right? To say the least. But during the times of pre-religious times, all spirituality was like that. We could say pagan and shamanic. All spirituality was that. Spirituality was to connect deeply to these aspects of nature. And the forms, actual living forms, were very important. A particular, let's say, species carried this at the level of archetypes. So the whole world of totemic animals, right? The word totemic, that's what it exemplifies. And it is true throughout very large territories, from Central Asia and Siberia all the way to America, North America and South America. This was practiced. This certainly was practiced in Europe in ancient times, where animals were considered to be particular animals. They carried that significance. So where does it come from in Vedic spirituality in India? Because it's so ancient. So we don't know. Maybe that's where it goes in very, very prehistoric times. The so-called cult of Shiva, or the Shaiva, teachings, is considered to be an articulation of very ancient forms of spirituality. And some scholars argue that the very first forms of worship of the divine, absolute, was Shiva in the form of Rudra. See? Shiva in the form of Rudra. So later on incorporated into the body of the language in Vedic times. So this wise, like peacock and swan, simply for their archetypal qualities of what these animals represent, what they carry. See, like maybe peacock's extraordinary appearance, right? That it conceals its power in the tail, and then it can open it up fully, right? And kind of it has this, as whatever that is then translated into, that hidden power. In swan, it's in many cultures considered to be a very special animal, in many, many cultures. So I don't know, I don't have enough knowledge on how and why this, but all we could say, like, there are symbolism of the birds of the world, from the raven, the crow to hummingbird. Like, you could find all of them carry this. All of them carry this kind of symbology. And in pre-religious times, the connection to the natural world was very different. This, in a way, we could argue that a certain departure, it all kind of coincided all together. See that this departure from the natural world, where the communion with the natural world was inseparable from so many factors, not just survival, but survival, of course, perhaps is the primal factor, but survival meant to live in harmony, in a kind of contractual agreement with each other. So we coexist together, and as humans, we fasten that connection through certain, let's say, internal dimension. So if I meant to hunt these particular animals, I know that if I hunt them very quickly, I can exterminate them, and that means my tribe will die here. We were not stupid back then. So there was this like, let's fasten that connection. So all these primitive forms of arts were born out of continuous, constant need to have that appeasement there. You know, if I kill you, if I hunt you, that means I become you. You see? You nourish my tribe, you nourish my body, you nourish my spirit. I worship you because of that. No, it's not like, oh, kill the mammoth. You know, this is Hollywood. This is to justify how brutal we then can be, because that's who we are. We're like here to kill, you know? No, this is enough. It make me yawn, all this, you know? No, ancient people lived a highly sophisticated life, beyond our imagination. Sophistication of that life is beyond. You read, as a kid, I read Fenimore Cooper. You know, you want to know anything, a thing or two about the Native Americans, read Fenimore Cooper. It's a classics of American literature. Hudson River, the whole epic that he wrote, you know, upon which that famous Last of the Mohican was made with Daniel Day-Lewis. It's adaptation of one of that trilogy of the Fenimore Cooper, the life of the Chingachgook, you know, the great serpent, was the last of the Mohicans. The first book is like page after page after page after page, nothing's happening, endless description of wild nature, which is upstate New York right now. This is when he was writing about this. And the story is this, a Westerner, white man, raised by natives, who completely is native in every way. Who knows this story? Anybody knows the story? No? I don't remember, you don't know? Well, that's the story of the Last of the Mohican. You know the story? Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Good to know some companies here. Yeah. So, do you remember how the description of his prose, of being able to tell what animal passed here, how long ago, by examining the steps, footsteps, hoof steps. See? Just by examining the steps, he knows that this man, this height, carrying something very heavy, you know, like animals, like it's beyond any kind of like, you know, level of imagination. You have to live in that wilderness and be brought up in that wilderness to speak the language of nature. So just by hearing the chirping of the birds, you know what's happening in the environment. By the way the leaves rattle and the wind moves, you understand something. You see? Like every pose, like just what I'm saying right now is the departure from natural world was marked already greatly by departure from the pagan times, because that connection was no longer needed. We started to live in large cities. We started to, you know, like in no time came the time of industrial revolution. With the rise of the industrial revolution, there was this unstoppable kind of belief that we can just bend the laws of nature in our favor, to the degrees that in what was happening in Soviet Union and United States in the 60s is mind-boggling. I'm not talking about atrocities, and I'm not talking about lies and all this, like, I'm not talking about continued hypocrisy. I'm talking about stupidity. Stupidity. All these flights to the moon, all this diverting the flow of rivers to irrigate the land where the rivers don't flow, and for a reason. All this is part and parcel of that, what also happened during that departure, you see? And so I'm now becoming a little bit mono kind of in terms of the direction, because I'm often in this kind of conversations, responses go back to, because I could see how it all naturally progresses towards artificial intelligence, and I deeply, passionately despise it, you see, completely. I don't like artificial intelligence because there is no artificial intelligence. It's impossible. It cannot be. We spoke about this last year. When was this speak about that? If it has no prana, no intelligence. Prana and intelligence, that's what it is. Prana is an active aspect of consciousness. Period. Understand that. That's all there is. So how can that be that there is, it's forever at the mercy of some kind of digital, electric, or whatever energy. It doesn't have energy of its own. Does not generate prana, does not convert prana, has no life force. It's dead, and it is dead. I don't care if it algorithmically can play chess with me, or it can tell me, inside out. It's boring, it bores me, you see? So all these guys and all these people, and when I read about that, I can see it's all leading to very unpleasant times for our children. Unpleasant, because they will be carrying this burden of having to return to nature. There's no other way. There's no other way. See? So this archetypal why sacred. So at certain level of conversation, at certain level of discussion, and certain level of consciousness, all this matters very much. And even at a subtle level, it still matters, because it provides us with the required, needed, added, let's say, confirmation, guidance, reassurance. It gives us, the dream world is inseparable. We still dream in deepest connection to the millions of years of our evolution. Don't you dream of wolves, dogs, tigers? Of course you do. We all do. We dream of wildlife. Maybe less and less, but these are all totemic animals. But at the transcendental level, at the level where it's important for us to have communion with and direct access to, this is not as important. Because at that ultimate level, what we do understand, that it is truly there are no others. And when there are no others, nothing is sacred and nothing is profane. And this is also a great source of liberation. It's the end of sorrow. Preferences play themselves out. We still go with the way how we prefer it. But we know that nothing is sacred because nothing is profane. Everything is sacred. It's either everything is sacred or nothing is sacred. It cannot be 50-50. And when that knowledge dawns, when that insight rises, then the line between sadhana, life, begins to get obliterated. Offering, practice, prayer. You read that, folks. I'm sure you do. You've come across all this, It's from the Rumis. When you're inside Kaaba, you don't know which way to put your rag. Which way do you know? You don't. Or, who was that? Which saint? My breath, my hands, my set of touch, my eyes, that's the Jesus. Christ now, the second coming of Christ isn't that. He already here. He's not coming again. This is a baloney of Christian fairy tales. Christ here at all times as my own breath, as my own eyes. Right now, at all times. Was it Catherine of Siena? Was it Catherine? Who was that? Teresa of Avila? Doesn't matter. I'm sure both of them agree. That's what it is. So Christ now is that. That's the second coming. So where does that take us? You see, so I don't know where that takes us. Where does it take you? That's what's important. Thank you.